Hi guys. So Burger Chan is closed this week. We get a little mini vacay just because we did have some unfortunate news at work, and we want to do the best thing possible. So we're going to wait for everyone to fully recover, get tested. The rest of our staff has gotten tested and we're all negative, thankfully. But here I am, and I'm going to make a little steak dinner for everyone out there tonight. So first of all, I just want to say beef prices have been a little crazy lately. I don't know if you've noticed, but at H-E-B, you know, just the good stuff is never on sale anymore. It's always pretty expensive. So tonight we're going to cook a cheaper cut. It's just going to be this chuck eye. It's cut from the chuck roast, but it's a specific area where it's a little less sinewy, and it's actually a fairly enjoyable cut. With it, we're going to do classic baked potato, and we're also going to do a little vegetable stir fry of white asparagus, king oyster mushroom, and red onion. So first off, king oyster mushroom, it's got a great texture. It's very meaty. Great flavor, but it does need a little help. And we're going to do that with butter. Just going to do a nice large dice. Of course, you'll notice today we're actually at home, not at Burger Chan, so it's going to be a little bit different. Okay. So what I really like doing with these mushrooms is poaching them in butter. So I've got just all butter over here, and this butter has actually poached mushrooms off before. I save it just for future poaches. I mean, this is not sauteing in butter. This is poaching. And we're just going to let that poach for about 3, maybe 5 minutes. All right. Next up, white asparagus. I guess we can cut diagonally just to make it a little more visually appealing. It doesn't really matter, but why not? I think this is the first time y'all have seen me use the Nenox on camera. And I don't use this knife super often because it's at home. I do like using it at home, I just don't really use it at work. And this knife is pretty special to me because when I went to culinary school, as I was going to graduate, my wife Diane and some friends got it for me as a graduation gift. And let's see, for this, we'll just do a large dice. So for sure, this knife holds a very special place in my heart. All right, let's check on our mushrooms. Okay, so it's smelling really nice. I'm going to turn off the heat. We're going to start preheating our pan for the steak. All right, so we're going to season pretty liberally. And I'm just going with a little salt.
What kind of salt?
This is kosher salt. Coarser granules just make it easier to judge how much you're seasoning by hand. I like chuck-eye because it has fairly good marbling. It does have a little extra fat. And we're going to leave it at just salt. We're going to pepper at the end. And a plate is nice because any excess seasoning, you can just pick it up. And so our pan has been preheating. You can see we got one steak that's going to be a little thicker, so that's going to affect our cooking time. So there's a little fat cap here, not much of a cap, but I'm going to see if I can't get enough fat in that pan just from that little strip first.
What heat setting do you have it on?
Right now it's on very close to high. Since I am going to cook this steak all the way through, I just need to monitor the temperature. I don't want it to sear too quickly because then it could burn. But I also don't want to wait forever at the beginning, so I'm starting off on high.
How long did it take to preheat the cast iron?
So this is actually a French steel pan, and it took maybe a couple of minutes. It's pretty, this one's relatively lightweight. It's not nearly as thick as cast iron. All right. We're just going to give this guy a head start. I'm going to wash my hands real quick. There are two camps for steak cooking. There's the, oh, you only get to flip it once. I'm not part of that camp. It's been proven that if you flip the steak many, many times, you get a much more even level of cooking because each time you flip it, all that heat from that first side is still going down towards the center. You keep it on one side too long, you're going to see that really, really thick ring of gray because it's overcooked. So we're going to flip it pretty often I'd say roughly once every minute. I think going every 15 seconds, as modernist cuisine states, is a little excessive. I don't want to be washing it that much. Don't forget, we still have this guy. So we're just giving this guy a head start since it is a little thicker. You can see we're getting color slowly. I'm not trying to rush it because we are going to cook it all the way in the pan. If I were to finish this steak in an oven, I would go for a quick sear, try to get as much color on as possible. Okay, we're going to drop the next one.
Still no pepper?
No, so we're going to leave the pepper to the very end. Pepper can burn, even though it is very common, especially when you have a pepper crusted steak, to do it early on. I think it has a better flavor profile when we do it at the end. Again, since we're going to be cooking this for a while here, don't become too obsessed with the color on the outside. We're not in a rush to do that. We don't want it to burn. And we're also flipping about once a minute, maybe sometimes a little less, just to make sure we minimize the amount of overcooked steak. We're going to judge doneness by pressing on it. Right now, it is very, very soft. Still have a little ways to go. I'm going to turn on the vent before the smoke alarm goes off.
What do you love about steak?
The flavor. It's just so satisfying. That sear, the meatiness. Growing up, I could just never get enough steak. You know, in Chinese dishes, there's always very little meat in the dish. It's always a little meat to carry the entire vegetable dish because it saves money, and it was always such a treat growing up to get to eat steak because it's all meat. There's no filler. But I'm also not one of those that just wants to eat meat and that's it. I can see the only difficulty I'm going to have is this little piece back here is going to be a little thinner than the piece up here, so they're going to cook at different rates. Same with this guy, it's thicker here, thinner here. So bear that in mind when it looks a little uneven at the end. We have a pretty good sear. I'm dropping the heat just a little, down to medium. This first guy is pretty close.
What doneness are you aiming for?
I'm aiming for medium rare. And so for that, it's just the moment it starts tightening up. It doesn't feel nearly as soft as it did earlier. So first one's done. We're gonna let it rest. Second one is thinner. We're getting pretty close. And we're gonna use those meat juices and all the fat to cook our veggies. Once the onion gets a little color, we're going to go in with our asparagus. I'm holding off on my seasoning because none of my veggies are seasoned. So I'm going to wait until the mushrooms go in before I season all of it. Otherwise, if I season the onions and then the asparagus, there's a chance by the end of it I'm going to have under-seasoned mushrooms and over-seasoned asparagus. You can see our steak resting in the background.
What heat is this on?
So it started off on medium right now. Now that we got everything in there, I just moved it back up to high. We're just trying to cook off some of the excess moisture.
Why asparagus?
It's just a break away from the typical green one. Honestly, if they had purple, I would probably have gone purple. I think, you know, it's not that different in flavor profile. They just achieve it by not giving it as much sunlight, so there's much less chlorophyll. You can see a little bit in the tips still. And we're getting pretty close.
How do you know when it's done?
You try it. It's the surest way. just a little more seasoning. The mushrooms were already poached, so all we're looking for is for the asparagus.
Did you eat the veggies when you were a child?
Yeah, of course. All right, I've turned the heat off. I'm going to get this bigger guy back in just for a moment. When you get to a medium rare, the steaks should be releasing a little liquid. If you've rested your steaks and there's no liquid, it's probably undercooked. They're probably still raw.
What is this quick sear for?
I just wanted to concentrate some of the juices that they let out. It has seasoning in it. That way we just get some of it back onto the steak. So steak is rested. We're gonna slice it at the very end. That way it'll stay hot. We're gonna start plating. So we're gonna get our baked potato first. That one's gonna stay hot the longest.
You baked them in the toaster oven?
Yeah, I did. Key to a good baked potato is after you cut it, really smush it. That way it's going to take all your toppings a little better. Some butter.
That's more than some. That's a lot.
Gives it flavor. So I like going with butter first. That way you let it melt. Russet potatoes have a very strong ability to absorb butter, making them the best baking potatoes. Like to go with cheddar next. That way it has a little head start to melt. A healthy dollop.
Do a dollop, do a dollop.
Bacon. I like big chunks. I want to know it came from actual bacon, not just little bacon bits out of a little thing. Green onion. Okay, so there's our potato. We're gonna go with a little veggie.
People may wonder if we eat like this every night.
Just about.
That's a lie.
I wish. Fan it out, not too fussy. Kind of try to keep them all together so that it doesn't lose the temperature too quickly. I like a little on my potato too. There you go. Chuck eye steak, baked potato, and asparagus and mushrooms.
So what's for dessert?
Ice cream.
We have ice cream?
I don't know.
Can we eat now?
Yeah.
Yes.